Hello, humans. Master Dinnerflax here, bringing you low quality content you deserve, and today we'll be going over Time Thief. Ooh, and Time Thief, pretty interesting archetype. It's an XZ deck about attaching things, not monsters, to it, which is strange, and I like it. But to give you a basic idea of how this deck is going to play, since this is a pure variant, we're not throwing in just different engines. You want to just use the originals. All you're trying to do is like turbo redoer and use all of his effects over and over again as much as possible until your opponent is completely grinded out of resources, which typically happens with this deck. I've been testing it a lot on Yugioh Pro and Dueling Book, and the only games this deck really loses are to like pretty powerful going second cards or just hard bricking. Like a normal game versus another deck, it is really hard to lose with this deck, assuming you have got your engine going. And it's actually pretty insane to think about because I thought this deck was just do nothing except summon Redoer. And while it is that, Redoer is actually just that powerful. It can dodge mostly anything. It has like a proactive draw, and it has a disruption, a non-targeting, non-destructive, quick effect shuffle, or spin to the top of the deck effect. That is really insane. So what I decided to do is I'll make a Time Thief deck where we're trying to summon Redoer, but to back up Redoer, I'll just set 5 cards. Or I'll set 3 cards, have hand traps. Like, I felt like Redoer was actually just so powerful that there was no reason to do much of anything else into like Super Poly or Prankatops. Like, just like set your back row and then they can't play, and that's what I went for, and it's been working very well. But let's go ahead and get into it. We got Triple Winder. He can special summon himself by detaching a material from an XE you control. That is a very relevant effect, and that is a very good effect. I really wish he looks like a warrior, but he isn't. So I really wish I could play Rhoda for this guy for like no reason. There's nothing about him as a warrior. He just looks like it. But his more important effect is when he's normal or special summoned, you get to search your deck for a Time Thief card. Now, back before the new OCG support came out, this effect was literally pointless because there wasn't a single Time Thief card that you could search with this card that mattered. But now, since we got the counter trap, he searches a disruption right before you XC with him. So that's actually really good. It's almost to the point where pretty much the only thing he's searching is this. Until you run out of these, then you're just searching random monsters for XCs to end the game quicker. Like, yeah, this guy is very, very good. Only because they get added one good search target to him. And then we got Triple Time Thief Regulator. This is like the first turn lone fire of the deck. And I say first turn is you can't use him if you control any other monsters, which kind of sucks. But if he's the only monster and you tribute him off, you get 2 Time Thief cards from your deck with different names that's not him. So it's pretty much just this guy and this guy. He also has like a revival effect when Nexi is destroyed by battle. That's cute. I don't really use that. I use it if it comes up, but that's a really, really rare effect to use since Redoer just dodges everything. It's kind of weird. But yeah, he's like the first turn starter. After first turn, he pretty much does nothing the rest of the duel. And we got Bezel Ship. He's got a quick effect that is very similar to the trap in that you can tribute him while he's on the field, and then you can target a card in your opponent's graveyard, and that it's a monster that you attach to the material, and that is like pretty handy. It's like a many called by the grave. Like, oh, mathematician send Harpoor. Okay, at resolution bezel ship attaches a material. I slurped it up. You can't use it right now, and that's pretty handy. The trap is a little better at doing that though, because the trap can attach any card. So not only can you do what I just mentioned, but you can also just like take a trap out of their grave to make a disruption, or like, yeah, like the trap version of this card's a little better. But since it's a monster, it also has the bonus effect. Has the bonus effect where if it's in the graveyard, you can attach a material from an XE, and it summons itself from the grave, but it'll banish if it leaves the field. But if you XE with it, that doesn't matter. So that's pretty cool. Only 2 of this, because it's something that is still always a normal summon, whereas this can be a special summon, and this is 2 monsters instead of 1. This is just straight up 1 monster, so only 2 of this. And I don't play Recorder because I think it is genuinely awful. It's first effect that's like this. It's trash. It literally does nothing. It's like, you take no battle damage. Like, okay, that's shit. What's its other effect? And its other effect, well, it seems good on the surface because if Redoer banishes itself, you can special summon it. But the problem with that effect is you are using Time Thief Redoer's effect, dodging effect very reactively. Like, if there's any threat that Redoer currently can't out, or your traps can't out to defend Redoer, you're going to try to dodge to next turn to see if you can get an out next turn. But if you're doing that with Recorder in the grave, it means you don't actually get to use Recorder proactively. It's pretty much like if you're like trying to dodge something, the only thing you're doing is bringing a monster back that's going to negate one attack effectively. And I felt like that wasn't very good. So I just don't play it in here. Like, I can see the utility of its second effect, but its first effect is just so genuinely terrible. I don't see a use for the card. But yeah, that's it for the Time Thief monsters. There's not very many. Even when we try to max out, you can only put 12 in a main deck. So to make up for that, we got triple Summoner Monk. The only thing you're ever going to try to summon off of Summoner Monk is either more Summoner Monks or Time Thief Winder, because this won't have its effect, and this won't really do anything if you summon off Summoner Monk. So, yep, triple Summoner Monk. It's a very fragile card. Like, it can lose to so many hand traps. It can lose to like a single trap card, and you have to toss a spell to use it, but when it resolves, it's actually just insane. And you actually just need level 4s that summon level 4s in this deck. And I'm not talking like Tin Goldfish or Goblindenberg. No, you need something that really gets you to your engine, and Summoner Monk is one of the very few cards in the game that can just summon a level 4 from your deck. Even at the cost of a spell, it is totally worth it. And then we got triple Ash Blossom. This deck, like I said, it really needs to set up disruptions that are more than just Redoer. So having Ash Blossom, there you go. Triple Instant Fusion. This is a monster that is also a spell for Summoner Monk. Now, if I have this and Summoner Monk, I'm going to try to keep myself from tossing this for Summoner Monk unless I just... even then, it's a hard call, because if you open Summoner Monk Instant Fusion, you actually want to make sure you try to save the Instant Fusion just in case the Summoner Monk gets negated by Imperm or Ash. Because if you keep the Instant Fusion, you can still make Redoer and it doesn't matter. But like, if it's the only spell, it's a really hard call, because the more powerful effect would be to get Redoer of the effect, but the safer move would be Instant Fusion. And that's just the thing, like, you're just either going to risk it and possibly lose to win the duel, or do something mediocre but it's safer. It's a player call. There's not really too much of a right choice. I mean, I think there is, but like, it's just a call you have to make with this deck. Triple Called by the Grave. This deck has a lot of cards that lose to hand traps, like Regulator and Summoner Monk, so, yeah, just take that and take that hand traps. And one of the interesting things is it's another card, like I was saying, like Ash Blossom. This deck just needs disruptions to go with Redoer, and Called by the Grave is a very good one. Not to mention Called by the Grave just being a spell for Summoner Monk is always handy. So yeah, it's a really good fit in here. Then we got triple Cosmic Cyclone. This is in here more because it's just a spell for Summoner Monk than it actually is at doing the thing it's meant to do. There were like... This deck is like 20 cards, and then the rest of the deck is just filler. If you haven't noticed, like, most of this deck is just like, yeah, I'll play these 20 cards. Oh, man, I need to put like 20 more cards in my deck. Like, if you take out all the responsive cards, like Imperm, Ash, Called, and you, like, take out the filler draw cards, I think you are actually left with, like, 20 cards. And if you include Summoner Monk as filler, it's, like, less. There's not a lot of deck here. And, like, to get to 40 cards, you have to put stuff in your deck. And this is one of the things was, like, I can't think of anything else. But here, 3 Cosmic Cyclone. Take that, Mystic Mind. It's also a spell for Summoner Monk, and it's a disruption against a decent amount of decks, like Solemn Great. Oh, I'll set my Roar, ha! And then you Cosmic Cyclone it. Or they activate Babel, Cosmic Cyclone it. They set Crescendo, Cyclone, Dragonic Diagram, Cyclone. Like, it's also a disruption a lot of times, which, as spells and traps are becoming more proactive, Cosmic Cyclone is becoming more of a disruption. So, yeah, it's got that going for it. Triple Pot of Desires, because as soon as you make Redoer, the rest of your deck literally doesn't matter. And even if you can't make Redoer, you will activate Pot of Desires because it will let you make Redoer. This card in this deck doesn't matter. Like, the Banish 10, who gives a shit? Like, add Banish 10, draw 2. You drew 2. Who cares what you banished? You can go games without even pretending to look at your banished pile. Because I understand, like, the mentality between Desires where it's like, oh, but if you banish engine pieces, no. This deck is like, the only time Desires can hurt you is if you draw into multiples of these and you banished both of these. That's the only time Desires can hurt you in this deck. This card is just so powerful. I love playing decks that can play this. And then, again, this deck, like I said, it has so much filler in it. Upstart. It's a spell. And then we got triple Retrograde and 1 Flyback. Now, if you noticed, I didn't play any of the Time Thief spells. I read both of them, and they were legitimately some of the worst support cards I've ever read on spells. Like, their effects are just straight up awful. Like, one has temporary targeting protection for a turn. Like, that's neat. But it doesn't do anything else. I think it has an attack gain. But that doesn't matter. And then the other one is like, it's like a Marauding Captain, but its graveyard effect is effectively impossible to activate. Because you have to have a Time Thief monster spell and trap in the grave. And that takes so much setup, so that didn't matter. And I was looking and I was like, I just won't play the Time Thief spells. They're all just straight up trash. And what's interesting is when we were talking about the new Time Thief XZ, like, you're never wanting to attach a spell to Redoer with it. Like, if you're setting it on your opponent's turn, like, you want to attach a trap to it because there's not much benefit to drawing on your opponent's turn unless you specifically draw Ash Blossom. So, like, that, yeah, you just want to attach a trap to him when it gets to your opponent's turn. So, there was no reason to ever even have a spell to begin with. So, I just didn't play the spells. Retrograde, though, well, it is only a spell and trap negate. This card is actually insane when you think about it. Because what a counter trap does when it negates a card is you pay the counter trap, which is the card itself, and then it destroys the card that you're negating. So it is a 1-for-1 that prevents an activation. However, this actually isn't that. This is actually better than that, because you are taking away their card at the payment of your card, so it's a 1-for-1, but it attaches either a spell to Redoer, which means you get a draw, so you go +1 from this, or you attach a trap to Redoer, which just takes away a card from your opponent, so you force a minus on your opponent. This counter trap, by design, is either a +1 for you or a -1 for your opponent after resolution. And that is mind-boggling. That is so cool. Yeah, this thing's insane. Not much to say about it. The only thing I will say is, in the decks it's dead against, like Thunder Dragon or any huge danger variant, this card can be pretty dead. So I wouldn't blame you if you play less than 3, but in the situations where you would want to play less than 3, every copy you take out, you should replace with this. This card, its normal effect is pretty okay. You can attach a Time Thief card from your deck to a Time Thief XC, which is usually a trap if you're activating on your opponent's turn, like I said. But that's a disruption, and it's an additional disruption, because while it's in the graveyard, it's this card. You can banish it to make it this card, except it can attach anything. So if they impermanence you earlier on in the duel, you can go, okay, trap effect, flyback, imperm. Now it's an additional disruption again. Like, this card is very solid. The only issue is with both of these traps is you need to have an XC out. So that's really important, as you can figure, like, as soon as you get to your XE, this whole deck just opens up and you don't need to do, like, anything else. But it's very important to get to that. And then Shade Brigandine, this is a monster, same with Instant Fusion, where it's just a level 4. But this automatically turns Redoer into a disruption, which is pretty cool. And then we got triple Solemn Strike, because I felt this deck is really like Weenie Beat. If you guys remember the old school Weenie Beat decks, your boss monster is not even at the 2,500 mark, which is the old school standard for beater. Old school standard for beater. It's not even at that for like 2014. So like, this is a very Weenie Beat deck. And if your opponent summons Big Monster, you need to have, like, actual answers to big dumb monsters. So I felt like Solemn Strike, while it can't stop, like, normal summons, the fact that it can deal with so much more is insane. And the reason I'm not playing Judgment is because I felt that I feel like Solemn Judgment is best when negating... I feel like it negating summons is the worst part of Solemn Judgment. While it is very good that it has that effect, I feel like Solemn Judgment is best at negating spells and traps. And since you have 3 searchable, quote, Solemn Judgments, I felt like it wasn't necessary. But I really wanted to stop monster effects, so Solemn Strike goes in. And it's the same thing with Impermanence, but Impermanence has the beneficial effect of being fucking broken. So, yep. That's it for the main deck. I actually did a lot of explaining because I've actually been doing quite a bit of testing with this. It's actually been pretty good. The only games I'm trying to solve, the only issue is if you can't get an XE out turn 1, you've probably lost the game. And I'm trying to get a solution where you always have an XE without taking out the interruptive cards, but I don't know if there's a solution to that yet. We will see. And for the side deck, the only thing that's interesting is Gamma. Because you're playing Redoer and you can make Lambda, you can search these. That's the only thing to keep in mind. Then for the extra deck, we got 2 Redoers. If you've ever needed to make a third one, you were probably not going to win that game anyways. But to be fair, you could put a third one in here and it wouldn't matter, because you usually one gets destroyed sometimes and then the second one ends the game usually. And we got one of this one. I usually don't make this until I'm going for like a really big push. Like, again, this is a weenie beat deck. So when you're going for this, you're not trying to kill, you're just trying to end the game. You're putting your opponent in a situation where they can't come back. Like, the games you're winning with this deck are when your opponent's like on 1 to 2 cards to your 8. Because you've been constantly drawing, you've been constantly shuffling back. They've been falling into your traps over and over again, and they run out of cards. You're effectively simplifying the game state with all your traps and disruptions, while at the same time Redoer is constantly giving you advantage. And I feel like that's just a very good win condition for this deck, because it doesn't pretend like it's trying to do something cool or big negate combos. It's just like, I'm playing the game and you're going to lose at this game. And I really like decks like that. But this thing, what it does is it attaches anytime it attaches an XE material to this guy. And usually you're going to use traps, again, if you're doing it on your opponent's turn. But if you're doing it on your turn, you're going to still attach traps, because I don't play the spells. And, like, the reason I also don't play the spells is because she doesn't come up, like, turn 1, or sometimes even turn 3. She comes up when you're trying to solidify your play set winning. So she's not win more, but she's the thing that makes it to where you're no longer going to lose. And I don't summon her turn 1 because Super Poly exists. So, yeah, that's fun. Then Abyss Dweller, Nightmare, and Exton, you will never make these ever, so I don't know why they're in here. This you'll make a lot. This, out of Thousand Eyes Restrict, you'll make a lot. And then therefore Link Revo. I made this once, made this once. I've never made any of these. Like, Redoer just does all of that at the same time. And, like, if you're in a situation where you need to make Borreload to out something that Redoer couldn't do with its trap effect, you probably weren't going to win anyway. But, yep, that's the deck. Thank you all for watching. I know this has been a longer video than normal, but I felt like there was a lot I needed to explain. And this deck is actually just really fun and really interesting. But, yep. That's about it. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. And remember, Master Interflax will take your soul.